Hi there. In this lecture we're going to go over an instructive Bobby Fischer game where the King's Indian attack was employed, and this is Bobby Fischer against Rodolfo Cardoso in the 1957 match, Fischer-Cardoso match. So round 8, knight f3 from Bobby Fischer, knight f6, g3, d5, bishop g2. So the King's Indian attack being used here, bishop f5, and it looks as though black is setting up a kind of London system, bishop outside of the pawn chain, and maybe later would consider c6. We see d3, bishop d6, knight bd2. Now here is actually, and you might find this surprising, an inaccurate move, h6. This pawn is an unprotected pawn, and believe it or not, this actually forms part of the ingredients for Fischer's next move. I wonder if you can guess it. It actually leads to quite a significant advantage from this position, believe it or not. It does seem like a sensible move to tuck away the bishop, but is it one move too far? What do you think Fischer played in this position if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? Okay. e4. Yeah, this is very, very interesting. We have bishop g4 because if d takes, and let's say knight takes, bishop takes, we have, can you see what white could play in this position? It's a really good move. Okay, queen d4. It hits the bishop, it hits g7. And this is very, very uncomfortable for black, believe it or not. So if bishop c6, taking here, this is just a huge advantage for white. And if we look at this again, if bishop takes f3, again, queen takes g7 actually, hitting the rook. This is just a big advantage as well. Yeah, it's just very, very interesting. So after e4, this is difficult. And if bishop goes back to h7, the bishop has to pin really, because otherwise there's e5. The bishop has to pin this knight now. So we see the bishop going to g4 to stop e5. This bishop takes there. But now white collects the light square bishop, so a bishop without a counterpart, and plays like this, knight takes f3. So it seems again the e-pawn is potentially hanging, but we see knight bd7. If d takes here, d takes, knight takes e4, there's knight d4. This is actually kind of dangerous for black. For example, b4, bishop takes b7, and even though black has a tactic here against d4, after knight c3, bishop takes d4 is a cute tactic relying on knight e2 check, white's still just winning the exchange, even if going into this, after bishop takes, white is better. So very, very interesting. We see knight bd7, so the pawn's actually ignored. Queen e2, d takes, bishop c5, and we see e5, knight d5, c4, knight e7, bishop d2. So Fischer has the bishop pair, and the light square bishop in particular, without a counterpart, is very, very interesting here. After knight f5, king h2, black was threatening knight takes g3 with that pinned pawn. So king h2, c6, and now b4, the bishop drops back. Bishop c3, it emerges here. Black plays very aggressively with g5, but this is super uncomfortable. White is potentially going to play g4 sometimes, pin that knight. It is an uncomfortable position, and we see how now knight d2 shows up that d6 is a great target square. Queen c7, knight e4 is played, believe it or not. Fischer is very precise. It looks as though, what about this e5 pawn now? Well, rook g8 was played. If knight takes e5, knight takes g5, and look, there's a nasty fork, queen and rook potential here. So this would be a disaster. So knight e4 is justifiable, rook g8, and now c5, king f8. Again, the pawn is immune. If knight takes e5, knight d6 check, and then bishop takes e5 is winning material. So king f8, knight d6 here. What a huge position this is. b6, Knight takes f5. This lets white have this very dangerous e6. opening up that bishop, that long diagonal bishop. Bishop f6. We have rook a d1. So not even doing anything with this bishop, just hitting d7. Knight e5. If bishop takes c3, this is disastrous. Rook takes d7, rook takes f7. Taking here. Big advantage for white. So knight e5 was tried. But now rook fe1, which allows a little tactic, knight g4, to win c3. But, you know, rook d7. And this is devastating. After rook takes f7, check. Rook d1, yeah. What a state of affairs this is. After g takes f5, black's been really crushed. And we see e7 check, the game ended here on move 32. If king e8, rook d8 check. And in fact, if king f7, rook d8 again, it's really kind of crushing. It supports e8 queening if the queen moved. So I'll take you to the game end. So another kind of beautifully elegant King's Indian attack game. It makes you wonder why modern grandmasters or just club players nowadays don't use this more than they do, this King's Indian attack system. I've always found it a kind of reliable weapon that faster time controls the King's Indian attack. And it shows here black shouldn't get too cozy about things. It seems that white has this latent threat of e4. So very instructive opening moment. Yeah, and once Fischer gets a positional advantage, that d6 square in particular became vulnerable. So what are the philosophical points here? Well, it seems, for me, the takeaway is, yeah, the King's Indian attack is pretty dangerous. You can positionally accumulate small advantages until they become absolutely crushing. You don't have to play razor-sharp opening theory. And Fischer, you know, back in 1957, this was a great weapon of choice. And it helped him win this match against Cardoso. So, yeah, huge position with the e-pawn crashing through later and the rook crashing through to the 7th rank. Quite often that's decisive in Fischer games if he gets a rook to the 7th rank. But here, yeah, it's absolutely devastating. So game ends here. Okay, I hope you got something from this particular game example. Thanks very much. Hi guys, I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you want more Bobby Fischer content, check out my Kingscrusher TV page. And if you go to the bottom of it, it starts at the bottom with 1970 to 1992. I also have 2 other Bobby Fischer courses. I found him absolutely fascinating to study. So there's 1956 to 62 early in his career, and there's 1963 to 68. So I hope you find those interesting. You might want to check them out, all the free samples. And I hope you really enjoyed this video. Comments, questions, likes, shares, always appreciated. Thanks very much.